first heard of it, Mary, what did you think and why did you want to be a part of it?
It just felt needed. And so when I was reading through the lineup and synopsis of it, I selfishly, I had to raise my hand. I'm like, do you have all your speakers? Because I want to be a part of this. I mean, I could just feel it inside of me. I just felt so led. I'm like, this last year was the best year of my life.
I'm honored to be here today, and I'm so thankful that I get to share this story with you. I'm thankful that I'm 37 years old and that I got to learn the lesson that I learned in the last year. And I'm thankful that I get to bring this forth to you. Today we're talking about what life am I living, successful or significant? I was raised to believe that success was everything. In fact, in the way that I was raised and in my childhood, the focus on money was a conversation that happened every single day from a scarcity mindset. I was also raised in an environment with alcohol and abuse. Now, I got to live a pretty neat childhood. First, I grew up in the performing arts. I got to be on stage just like this since I was 3 years old. I remember one of my first auditions and standing up there shaking like I have been for the last 2 hours waiting to do this. Apparently, some things never leave you. But I've been on the stage for decades. And I'm speaking today about how I changed and transformed from the moment of the way that I was raised to never believe that I was good enough, to constantly fight in the battle of trying to win my parents' love. I had a moment when I was 18 years old. After pursuing 15 years of the performing arts and believing I was on the path to become a professional dancer, I was in a car accident. And that future and that dream was taken away from me, and I had to pivot. Unfortunately, with my family, I didn't have anyone to look up to or rely on, as I was in the moment of my life of starting to separate from them. I was on my own with no identity. At 18 years old, I entered into a dark period of my life, but thankfully, I found an ad in a newspaper when I was 22 to interview with a Fortune 1000 payroll and HR company. And during that time, I learned the art of sales. I was brought on as a district sales assistant at $13 an hour. And during that time, I worked for the #1 sales manager in the country, who brought me under his wing and taught me about a career, a profession, and a life that previously I had not known about. Within 2 years in the role, I progressed into mid-market sales. And as I progressed into mid-market sales, I became the #1 rep in 30 days. I was the top rep for the 2.5 years that I was selling. I made hundreds of thousands of dollars. I had all the recognition and fame, and I thought I made it. I did it. But then I left at 27, and I took an equity position in one of my client companies. And they were a startup, $125,000 a year in annual revenue. And I went into this company, and I went in as VP of Sales and Marketing, a title that I never had. And in that time, I was able to help quadruple the size of the company in 7 months. And at that point, I said, I want to do this for a living. And I started my first company. And when I started that company at such a young age, with all the aspiration in the world, I fought for 3 years as an entrepreneur to figure out my worth, how to price for my services, how to delegate, and it was a very strenuous and difficult 3 years of my life. During that time, I found how to help 36 business owners reach profitability for the first time, and I worked myself to the point of exhaustion in doing so and was wildly underpaid. In fact, I had such a bad case of shiny object syndrome, I thought it would be a great idea to tap into my performing arts roots, and I ended up creating a children's television show that aired on Fox Saturday mornings, coupled with a radio show. And I ended up exhausting my bank account. I sold my 2 houses. I cashed in my 401k because I was trying to be something. I was trying to make it. I already felt like I peaked as a #1 sales rep. I was so successful. I still have the crystal, but there was something inside of me that was so empty, and I kept chasing and chasing and chasing. So I went and I cashed in everything that I had and exhausted the bank accounts so I could see myself on TV, so I could hear myself on the radio and say, "Look, Ma, I did it," except she wasn't in my life anymore. So there was nobody to receive that. And finally, my life came crashing down because I was empty on the inside and I was broken. And I was chasing, trying to fill everything inside of me. Well, I hit rock bottom, and I ended up deciding that it was time to choose something different. I'm an openly faith-based CEO now. I found Jesus when I was 29, and my life changed forever in that moment. Now, I prayed and prayed that I would have a husband, a man that cherished me, that loved me, that I didn't have to perform for, that I didn't have to be somebody else for, and God gave me that man, and we together prayed for that baby, and we tried, and it was so hard, and we finally had a successful pregnancy, and I got to welcome into the world the most beautiful boy that I've ever seen. You can see how beautiful they are and how happy I am in this moment. My son was a year old in this picture. I was wrapping up my second career at the Fortune 1000 payroll and HR company because I was a starving entrepreneur and drove myself into the ground. Part of the healing was that I had to acknowledge I needed to start rebuilding my life, and I needed to go somewhere I knew I could be successful. I went back to that payroll and HR company for 3 years in this budding relationship with this very handsome man I get to call my husband. And on the 3rd year, my son was 10 months old, right before we took this picture, and my heart was screaming on the inside for more. My heart was telling me that I was destined for something greater, but I had no idea what that was. This is the family that I prayed for, and I am so thankful for them, but I had a dream inside of me that was screaming. This was my dream, to go back into entrepreneurship, but to do it in a way that I could flourish. I had a rough go the first 3 years of my first experience, and this time I was committed to doing it different. I poured my heart and my soul into launching this company. I felt heart aligned. I knew my mission and my purpose. I felt extremely clear. I felt put on this planet to serve CEOs who needed to build a sales organization. I had a heart for them when they hit that first million and they needed to scale, but they didn't know how to transfer from being a CEO salesperson into their first sales hire, their second, their third. And so for 18 months, our heads were down. I built this team that you see here, and we fought tooth and nail to succeed. 100-hour work weeks. I was not a stranger to them. Traveling every single week. I was not a stranger. In fact, I knew the DIA security agents by name and my flight attendants. I scaled this company. For 2.5 years, I poured my heart and my soul into this company. And I remember December 2019, I was part of a women's CEO group, and we traded where we hosted, and we were all sitting together. We're sitting around the table, December 2019, I'm crying, tears of absolute joy. I made it, I did it. I scaled a company from 0 to 1.55 million. We have 10 employees. Holy smokes, we have the best paying customers. Everything is so great. I have arrived. I'm finally here. And then March 2020 happened. And what I had sacrificed for and what I had poured in for 2.5 years came crashing down in 3 days, and I had no idea when the bleeding was going to stop. Everything I had worked for 2.5 years, email after email, phone call after phone call, client canceled, client canceling, client canceling. those 3 days were the worst 3 days of my life. And maybe not for the reasons that you might think. This is my son. And these are his trains. And for 2.5 years in scaling this company, from when he was 15 months old to when he was 3.5, I wasn't there. But my husband was, and he raised her son. And on the nights that I was there, because I was never there in the morning, because a fast-growing, scaling CEO is the first one in the office, and they're the last one to leave. And I did business development for my company, so I was at every networking event in the evening when I wasn't traveling. I had 5 or 6 clients of my own, in addition to leading a team of 10, and they all came first. And so this business comes crashing down in 3 days that I had built in 2.5 years. And I finally have enough. I'm in my home office because it was right in that week when we were told we weren't allowed to leave our homes. It's completely foreign for me. And I come out into the living room, and my son is on the floor with his trains, his passion, his heart in those trains. The trains that I'm not allowed to play with. When I was home for dinner, I wasn't allowed to sit next to him at the table. I wasn't allowed to brush his teeth or put his pajamas on or put him to bed. Daddy was. And I told myself it's just a phase. You know, they're kids, right? He's just really favoring his dad right now. No sweat. It'll be my turn soon. And I was lying to myself. My kid didn't know me. Here he is on the floor. I sat on that floor, and the TV is on, and it's illuminating his face, and I look over at my own kid, and I said, I don't even recognize him. Like, who is this child? He's so big, and he's so handsome, and he looks just like his dad. And I look over at my husband, this man that I prayed for. After 15 years of failed, abusive, terrible relationships, God gave me the most wonderful man. And I let him raise our son and run the household. And he supported me in my dream and my vision. And he's so selfless. And I sat on that floor, and in that moment, in full surrender, on my knees, I gave it all to God, and I said, I'm sorry. And in that moment, I began searching for the truth, and my pastor led a series called Unshakable, and it was based on the scripture in Matthew 7:24, he who builds his house upon the rock, that when the rains and the storms come, it will stay standing, but the fool who builds it in the sand, the structure will be gone. And it was in that moment that I could hear the words so clearly. I gave it all to God. I said, just take it away, take it away. I'll go work for someone else. I'll go take a job. I don't have to do this anymore. I screwed it up, and I'm so sorry. And in that moment, he allowed me to keep this company, and he said, we're gonna do this together. And boy, have we done this together. Before I could care 1 ounce about my company, I had to get it right here, and with my family. And that was the commitment that I made. I was so intentional with my son. I cleared my calendar, and to this day, 1 year later, almost, I work 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. I make breakfast for my son every day. By the way, if you're curious, nobody makes eggs like mommy does. And daddy's not even allowed to touch the eggs coming out of the fridge because I have to pick out the ones that are going to go in the skillet. But I make that breakfast for him. I take him to school every day. I'm intentional, I'm committed. My son and I are like this, and my marriage has been restored. I got it right with myself so I could get it right for everyone else around me. And now mommy got promoted on the railroad. I get to build the track. I get to hear the vision. We put in the switches where they're supposed to go. We have the overpasses. We name the different sections because, by the way, the layout goes over the entire first floor of the house. My son and I were in a rhythm, and I realized how much of a responsibility I have in this world as a mother. that I was completely ignoring. Once I got it right at home, I realized it was time to get it right with my company. This is significance. This is everything. And now I get to get it right with my company. So how did I do that? Well, I didn't lose everything. The company wasn't built on the sand. We did some things right. And so I went back to the infrastructure and I went back to the team that we had left, the 9 loyal clients that we had left out of 20. That one hurt. And I made a commitment to double down on the services we were providing for them, how we did it. We became more innovative than we've ever been. We became the best problem solvers than we've ever been. We became complex problem solvers, creative problem solvers. Our clients were fearful of losing their companies, and we were committed in our value proposition to scale them. But how are we going to do that? We had to rebuild their infrastructure. And so we did for 9 months, heads down. Through that time, by putting our heads down and doing remarkable work and not growing weary and doing good, our clients that stuck with us, 9 clients in 2020, on average invested $175,000 each in our services, and we scaled them by on average $3.2 million in a pandemic year. Some of our clients reached new levels, broke through ceilings, and are on their paths now as we are in 2021 to levels they've never experienced or thought possible. Now I look at the team that I have. I love them so much. Just seeing their pictures on here, I changed in that moment. You know, I used to require everybody to be in the office, whether it was snowing, whether they had a sick kid at home. I don't know, that's how I grew up professionally. You were always in the office, you were always committed, you were always working, and I changed. I changed how I am as a leader. We changed our core values. We rebranded our company. Our company is now called House of Revenue because we build those unshakable foundations for our clients to scale always. And now we learn in our new core values, serve first ourselves, each other as a team, and then our clients, loving them as people first, as human beings first, getting connected to the CEO and understanding their dreams, their hearts, their passions, and then scaling the company, but committing to succeeding always. My question for you, what life are you living? Are you successful? Or are you significant? Thank you.
I'm Mary Grothe, and I'm one of the speakers this year. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to go about the presentation today, but after watching about 7 or 8 speakers go before me, I was so inspired. And sitting in the audience, listening to them, many of them bringing me to tears, and realizing that I'm a speaker halfway through, I've got to continue to bring it. And they really set the tone for me. When I went on stage, I had some speaker notes written out that I threw together last minute, and it took me about 5 minutes to realize I don't need to rely on my notes. The energy, the vibe, and I could just feel the passion in the room of commitment for people who were ready to be here today and to learn, and it flowed. It came out natural, and I really hope it was inspiring.